lot.
Right.
Well, he can't be happy if she makes him feel lower because she makes more money, which a lot of them do.
Right. We definitely got into that one.
I would tell you this: upon moving to California, you learn to live with minimum, the bare minimum, right? So what I've learned, what Cassandra showed me that she was never materialistic, so it don't take a whole lot to make her happy. Um, so I know the woman I'm with is happy, though I don't make a whole lot of money or can't, provide like I did in Florida. So again, I think a woman will have to answer, would she be happy with a man that don't make a lot of money? Is all your needs still being met? I think, and I sometimes don't believe it's so much as the money they're bringing in. I think if your needs are being met, you're okay. Because you can make a lot of money, your needs not being met, you're still unhappy.
Yeah.
So
True.
But I think a lot of that though depends on expectations. So I think in reality, a lot of people have created an idea of the life they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're trying to achieve. Now they're willing to negotiate or trim back or compromise and collaborate to create something that works with another person, but they still have a threshold of what they expect their life to be.
Right.
And if a person can't get to that threshold within, no matter how much the money is, that can sometimes lead to level of conflict.
Ooh, good point. All right, fellas. So to everyone tuning in, welcome. And you were just hearing some of our pre-game talk that was going on. So we're excited to be back with you all tonight. For the newbies, welcome to That's What He Said, where we uncover the thoughts of our Black men through transparency and vulnerability. So to the fellas, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know we're in between sports and finals and all sorts of excited events, but you all found this necessary to be a part of, and I appreciate you for that. This much needed dialogue is intended to improve our families and our communities along with our well-being. So thank you for joining us as we help to change the narrative and push our people forward. So just want to say hello to all of the returning fellas, but we have somebody new with us, Jay. Jay, would you mind just introducing yourself and letting us know just what you're passionate about? What makes you come alive?
Ooh. Well, first of all, my name, they call me Jay Horn. That's number one. And what I'm passionate about is actually family. Building up family. Building up husbands, building up wives, building up the children. Because again, they are our generation. So that's what I'm passionate about. And also, I'm passionate about strongly about my people in Black history. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for being with us. And where do you join us from? South Florida, right?
Yeah, Miami, yeah.
Miami. All right. Adrian, where are you at?
I'm also in South Florida. I'm in the Fort Lauderdale, Broward area.
Okay, cool. So everyone is local. Mark, you holding it down for us in Cali. Hopefully.
West Coast.
All right, so with no further ado, we have some interesting questions that we want to jump into. I know for me, and tonight, as you all know, Adrian is our guest, and we are talking about his provokingly titled book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last. And what's great about this panel tonight is I'm looking forward to kind of being the fly on the wall as the fellas converse amongst themselves, because it's a great opportunity as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, to just learn the hearts of men. So it's not a time for me to really debate. Instead, I'm seeking to understand really what their struggles are, what their wants are, because I feel like that will help move dialogue forward. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's jump right in. Jay, I'm gonna toss it to you as our guest. You could go ahead and kick us off.
My question is for Adrian, of course. I would like to know, do you believe that your book speaks in the language to all cultures?
Yeah, I believe that the book, it speaks to when we say cultures, it speaks to the Judeo-Christian minded individual mostly. It doesn't cut across the grain in if your religious background may be Muslim or Islam or even but some perspectives, yes, Jewish and definitely Christian. It cuts across those many denominations that we also find, whether you're Baptist, Methodist, Seventh-day Adventist, Episcopalian, Catholic, Jesus people, or Seventh-day Adventist, if I said one, Jehovah Witness, I think is, and it continues on in that way. So it uses the Christian Bible as a background to a lot of what it's talking about contextually. So for those cultures that uses those lens, this book is written from that perspective.
Okay.
Right.
So keeping on the topic of the Bible, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Adrian, love the book, bro. Love it.
I appreciate that.
It. It definitely give a whole different perspective on, of things we've heard and what we've grown up to know what a man should do and how a man should act. But I do notice you put a lot of biblical verses in there, and you did say that you were a man that came up in the faith of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your understanding of the role of the husband or man as expressed in the Bible? And how do you differentiate from the role that Yahweh has expressed for the man to what you were expressing in your book?
Yeah. Well, so I think I like to say that what people do is they believe in Jesus Christ, but they practice Apostle Paul. And what I mean by that is if you go to 1st and 2nd Corinthians and some of Ephesians, that's what most denominations in the Christian religion is based on. So think about that. I'm gonna say that again. Most denominations within Christian religion are based on 1st Corinthians, 2nd Corinthians, and some of Ephesians. So that's where we begin to run into conflict, because the hermeneutics of trying to dissect those scriptures become laden with all these various interpretations. The Methodists, the scripture says you're not supposed to wear earrings and jewelry. So you have a church that says, you can't wear earrings and jewelry. And the wife is supposed to not wear pants, and the woman is not supposed to speak in the church. And when you really go down and look at denominations, they split hairs with these scriptures and then create their denominations. And that is a lot of conflict, because now we have all these slight changes. So what has happened in the Christian Bible is a lot of denominations have taken what Apostle Paul has said in both Corinthians, when he talks about Christ is the head of the man and the man is the head of the woman. And they then use that hierarchy. So what my book points out, though, is when Apostle Paul first spoke those words in 1st Corinthians, he also spoke the same words in Ephesians. But in Ephesians, he spoke something else. He said that I speak to you a mystery. I'm really speaking to you about Christ and the church, because the church is considered the bride of Christ. So when we talk about this hierarchy thing, my book is not saying something different from what the Bible has said. My book is aiming to clear up what the Bible has said, because a lot of people throughout patriarchy has used that scripture to say that the man is over the woman, when Apostle Paul makes it clear in scripture, he's not even really talking about the man and the woman. He's talking about Christ and the church. And what comprises the church is both the man and the woman. So when you really look at it, is the man and the woman are both expected to allow Christ to be their head, not the man being the head of the woman. And it's that patriarchal domination that has gotten men fooled into think I'm the man, I'm supposed to have the power. And then the woman backdoor power to say, well, you're supposed to be the man, so you're accountable. And here we go back and forth in conflict. So my book is not saying something different from what Yahweh says or Jesus or the Messiah. It is actually meant to clarify what is being said in scripture to put us on even keel.
What's your thoughts, Mark?
So my thoughts on it are that, that's exactly, that's the way I see it also, is that what he was expressing was spiritual and characteristics, but also to that, the characteristics that he was applying to the Messiah as a head and the church as a body also was being applied to us as individuals, that we was made in the likeness and the image of him, and that there is a head and there is a body. In the house, there's a head and a body, and the head was pointed out to be the man in all instances that he pointed out in the Bible. However, again, that was something written back in, if you had to look at the biblical days, a man had to produce what he had to just give sheep and camel to go get a woman. So if you're going to go full Bible, then go full Bible with everything. So you can't pick and choose.
Well, if we're going to go full Bible, Mark, then men need to be sleeping on the roof when women is having their menstrual cycle.
No, this is what I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. No, I agree is that you can't go full Bible, especially without understanding, and especially not understanding that was for that particular time. But so I agree with what you said, but I still see that the man is the head of the household. But like I say, your book is making me reevaluate some of the things that I've come to know. But thanks for the answer. I appreciate it.
I'll throw this out there to take it one step farther. When the Bible speaks of the man as the head, I'll take it a step further. I believe the scripture is speaking to the spirit man, because God is not a respecter of person. And in him not being a respecter of person, he's not a respecter of gender. Now, I do believe that there is an administration that God allows for a man, and there is an administration that God allows for a woman. But I believe in order for us to understand what that administration is, man and woman needs to go before God and understand what that administration is by way of within their relationship. But the Christ spirit as the head of the relationship, I've come to tell people, listen, we could talk about the man being the head of the household, but I know for a fact, and I say this from a spiritual component, and I say this also as a researcher. When I really look at who the head of the household is, the head of your household is the culture and the character that the couple operates under. Because in other words, once you establish a particular culture within your household of this is the way that we resolve problems, you know what? If we throw fists when we resolve problems, that's the culture, and that's the head of the household throwing fists. If we argue and debate and becomes the head of the household, because it's called organizational culture. So when you go on your job, we understand organizational culture. This is the way we do business. The same way it works in business is the same way it works in interpersonal relationships. So the real head of the household has to be that Christ spirit, has to be you take it back to, what is that, Galatians, that talks about meekness and kindness and gentleness and temperance and long suffering. Those are the head of the household. If a man don't got kindness and meekness and temperance and patience and long suffering, how can he be the head? If a woman doesn't have meekness and kindness and temperance, how can she also facilitate in the process of headship and leadership within the household? So I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought. Who's really the head of the household? It's the culture that you create in the household.
Okay. Good conversation, good answer.
Chris?
Well, I agree that you have a lot of misinterpretations with the Bible, and the example you use of the Adventists using the Old Testament versus the New Testament, all that stuff with the earrings and what you eat and so forth. And that became contradicted later on in Romans, where they said they don't really care what you eat, it's what comes out of your mouth. It's not what goes in your mouth is what comes out your mouth, because what comes out your mouth is what comes from your heart. But before I go to my question, which is a biblical one too, I gotta say welcome back, Adrian. And
thank you.
I did actually try to implement. Well, I'm actually in the process of reimagining how I define myself as a man. And you know, I'm not maniacal about this head thing, being the head of the, so, but I mean, I think I probably lack flexibility, or maybe I can't see myself see myself not taking out the trash or not washing the car or stuff like that. But I guess that's something that I have to work on. You know what I mean? I'm still.
But take it out. Listen.
No, I'm taking it out. But I'm just
take it out.
I'm just using that. I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah.
You say you don't have to define yourself as a man. You see what I'm saying? Because
right.
I see. You know, it because I'm still maintaining a learning posture, right? Because it does provide a kind of euphoric sense of freedom, right? When you look at this whole new design. But anyway, I digress. But let me get to the Bible question before Alicia kill me on the time management, for the fact that I'm always pressuring her on that. So you frequently reference the teachings of Adam and Eve. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 important fundamentals from that lesson that still impacts us to this day?
The number one thing is we use the story of Adam and Eve to be a story about gender roles. And I fundamentally believe that it is not, as it is my revelation. Adam and Eve has nothing to do with a man working and a woman doing this and a woman doing that. That's number one. Second, what the story of Adam and Eve is about the one-on-one relationship that we have with God in the space of our spirituality. And the space of our spirituality is that Garden of Eden. And what God has done is God has put something in each of us that he needs to take out. And that is his purpose. Now once he takes that purpose out of you, he can manifest that purpose and present it to you. How are you going to manage that thing that God has given to you? How are you going to manage that gift? Now, if you allow that thing to lead you astray, then you've allowed it to lead you astray. And you now walk out of the midst of your spirituality and what God has called you to do as it relates to your purpose and his plan for you in this space. Now, when you embrace that thing and you don't allow it to lead you astray, I mean, Jay Horn, you all have never probably heard Jay Horn sing, but I'm going to tell you, this brother can sing. It is a gift. And I know it's a gift that God has given him. Now, if Jay Horn decides that he's going to use that gift to go chase down $1 million in the recording industry, and that's not what God is calling him to do, then he's allowed his Eve to lead him astray. But if he decides to allow God to use the gift toward his purpose, now he's subjecting that Eve back unto himself, because that's his purpose. Listen, Jay Horn's wife is a part of his ministry, but what happens if Jay Horn's wife leaves him? Has Eve left him? No, his purpose is contained within him, and God has to bring that thing out. So if we can move away from seeing the story of Adam and Eve as a gender-based story, as a story based on gender roles, that will begin to crumble this finger pointing that we do.
Finger pointing, I was just
right.
Gonna say.
Because the third thing that the story of Adam and Eve has done, it has revealed how man and woman do not take accountability for their actions. Women want to point their fingers and say, well, Adam was the leader. God even told him. And I think that is, it is besides me how much we want to emphasize on whether God told Adam directly versus if he didn't tell Eve. The last time you was on your job, when's the last time your CEO came downstairs to tell you something directly? You got a memo. And if you got the memo, then you know what the rule change was. So shut up about that. That's stupid. The reality is, once God has mandated his word and it trickled down to you and you knew what the rule was, it didn't matter if God spoke directly to Adam or indirectly to Eve. She knew what the word was. But men do what Adam did. Hey, it was the woman you gave me. Hey, listen, I've been there. When I went through my divorce, I was like, God, it was this woman you gave me.
Yeah.
So at some point, we have to come to understand, take accountability. Look at yourself. You mismanage your purpose. But people use that story to point their finger. Nah, it was the woman you gave me. Eve turned around. Nah, it was the serpent. Listen, Eve, just admit, I was wrong. I don't know how I got caught up. I got blindsided, but for whatever the reason was, I did what I did. I was wrong. Adam, hey, you know what, man? I was told not to do it. I was wrong. God forgive me. How can I move forward? That's what we need to get to instead of all of this finger pointing. So those are the three things about the story of Adam and Eve. It's not about gender roles. Second, it's about you and your purpose, and God and the Garden of Eden is contained within you and your spirituality and that one-on-one relationship that you have with God. And three, notice how it reveals the unaccountability that human beings have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've never learned of Eve equating to a purpose. For me, that was profound because it makes you think about the gifts we're given or his purpose that he deposited in us very differently. Charles, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I want to ask the question of, do you think that gender roles ever play a part in a relationship? Because even in the Bible, you know, it speaks of a man who findeth a woman finds a good thing. You know, a man that findeth a wife finds a good thing. So he's saying that, you know, we do play a role in that. And also, it also speaks on, like, you know, women being submissive. So if it speaks on these things, then it kind of sounds like to me that there has to be some type of head of household. There has to be some type of leader to, you know, you're building on with. So that's why I'm wondering, like, do you feel like at some point gender roles do play a part in relationships?
I definitely believe we have roles within our relationship. So I'm gonna answer your question in two parts. I want to first address the matter that you talked about, finding a wife. I think we have misconstrued that particular term, right? Who finds a wife. So women turn around and say, well, you're supposed to come find me. And then women say, well, you need to put yourself in a place to be found. I think it's ridiculous. I think find is a colloquial term that is simply used that when you come in contact with, that when you come upon, that when you connect with. You actually never find a wife. God reveals your wife. You never find a husband. God reveals your husband, because you could go out there and meet 20 chicks tonight at the club. You ain't find your wife until God has revealed that someone is your wife. You could date her for 30 years and God never reveals to you that's your wife. So we are really not the one doing the finding. God is doing the revealing. But I think we take that term in this culture of unaccountability and we try to push, well, oh, the man, you're supposed to be finding a wife. So woman, that's not my role. But here's the thing though. If someone is looking to sell something and they put it in the window and they're looking for a buyer, they have become a part of the buying and selling process. When you put yourself out there to be purchased, you are finding a buyer. So when the buyer finds you for the purchase and you're sold, you are both engaged in the marketplace. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that act of finding is not a solitude act of just a man looking for the woman, but then the woman says, well, you got to put yourself in a position to be found. Well, you are participating in the marketplace. We have buyers and sellers. And if you got the goods, you're going to put it out there for someone to do what? Come and buy. So if you are putting yourself out there to be bought, you are participating in the finding and the buying and selling process. So I say that as a count of women need to stop the unaccountability of as if they don't participate in the process. You're just as much in the marketplace selling and buying as everybody else is. The thing about gender roles is, in the book I talk about that we mix up task and roles. If tasks is one thing, task is take out the garbage, pump the gas, paint the wall. You know the honey-do list. Baby, can you install these brackets? Baby, can you hang this picture? Baby, I want to redo this room. Baby, can you? Honey, can you do? Well, by the way, what I used to do was I used to stop doing, or I'll do something real slow. I take a long time to do it, right? Because as soon as I finish one, she'll ask for something else. And I started to see the pattern. I was like, you have a list for me. So let me just take my time here, because you asking me for too much all the time. Now, what happens is this though. We mix up task and roles. We have told men and women that their roles are based on tasks. And I'm saying that our roles are based on those innate and intangible things that we bring to the relationship. I write about a simple rule in the book. If I can pay someone to do it, it's not my role. I can pay somebody to cook, call a chef. I can pay somebody to do the laundry, call a maid. I could pay somebody to clean the house. I could pay somebody to drive you wherever you want. That's a driver. We could have a butler to serve you. But they can't pillow talk with you. That's not where you go for a hug and for comfort. That's not where you go for covering. And I want to insert that word here, because I think when we really talk about marriage and relationships, what we're really talking about is covering for one another. Can I cover for my wife? And when I'm having a downtime, can my wife cover for me? Is she even praying for me and keeping me lifted up before the Lord? Am I praying for her and keeping her lifted up before? That's her role, is to cover for me. Now, we may express that in a lot of ways in terms of the task that we do, but let's not confuse the task for our roles. And that's what we have done. We now tell men, well, a real man gonna pump the gas. And I'm trying to, no, that has nothing to do with me being a real man. A real man is gonna cover for his wife, and he's gonna pray for her, and he's gonna keep her lifted up, and he's gonna encourage her, and he's gonna point her toward that North Star. And a real woman, since we like to use the term real, I'm not even a fan of it, but a real woman is gonna point her husband toward that North Star and is gonna encourage him, right? And is gonna prop him up. That's your role. So the problem is we have used tasks to define roles and have forgotten what our role is.
Hold on.
So
Let me go ahead, Adrian. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, so we have roles and tasks in the relationships. I think we're just not differentiating the two.
That's a good point, because they've definitely been overlapping.
Right.
I've seen that, heard that, experienced that for sure. Jay, let me jump to you. What are your thoughts on this?
Carter, I'm shocked.
Why are you shocked?
My mouth is closed. It sounds good. There's nothing I can say. It's sounding good. I'll be honest with you. I'm very surprised.
But what are your thoughts outside of it sounding good?
No, I mean, everything that he's saying is actually correct. For me to add on to that, I'd be crazy. I'm being very.
Okay.
Well, what he's saying biblically is on point. Is what the word is. It's the same thing, like he said, when it comes to Adam and Eve. I'm glad he went back to that point, because at the end of the day, Adam was created for that purpose, and her purpose was there to nourish him. The Bible says it's not good for man to be alone, and there was a reason why God created her, because God saw something in man that was weak, and he had to bring something that was inside of Adam to take it out of Adam, so Adam could recognize exactly what was going on within himself. You understand? Because a lot of women say, hey, men don't carry emotions. So I can tell you where it went. That's why he made Eve. Because at the end of the day, God can't, if God saw Adam in the field, right? And Adam is sitting there and the grass is just green and it just, nobody cutting it and this and that and the third, and he just sitting there crying and trying to figure out what's going on. God said, okay, wait a minute, you're a little bit too emotional, son. I need to give you somebody. And he brought that soft side of Adam. He took that emotion and said, okay, Adam, you can't handle emotions very well. So I'm gonna give somebody that's gonna balance you out.
So you're saying men can't handle emotions well? Is that what I'm hearing?
Listen, the Bible says it's better for a man to sit on the rooftop of a house than to sit in a house with a nagging woman.
A nagging woman is different than emotions. Oh, let me not get, you know what? Chris, what are your thoughts? I forgot I'm in the locker room. Chris, go ahead. What are you saying?
All right. To Adrian's first point, where you got to know what you do with your gift, right? I totally agree, right? That's one end of the spectrum, that you use your gift to go out there and make money, and you know what I mean? Cars on the clothes and you know what else. But then there's also the opposite end of the spectrum where you don't use it at all, which there's a saying that there's a lot of talent buried in the graveyard, right? But so I agree with the first point. I just want to add that, but to play devil's advocate on your second point, right? The
don't advocate for the devil, but go ahead.
Right.
Good point. But what I'm saying here is this: the interpretation is that most of the interpretation is that women generally are closer to vanity or more vain than men, generally speaking, you know, hence the makeup, all the stuff, you know, so I mean, what you have to say about that?
About women being.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's
that's the interpretation, the general consensus, right? Is
about
that
Adam and Eve?
Women are closer to vanity. That's why the devil could reach to Eve first before Adam, because of the old ancient evil vanity, right? It's not necessarily saying that I believe that, right? But I'm just saying that's a general consensus out there.
Yeah, that's one perspective. I mean, I've heard another perspective recently, which I thought was very profound too, was that the story of Adam and Eve is really about the sexual nature of human beings and how we operate in sex outside of how God had ordained it. So there is this promiscuity, there is this all of this stuff that happens. Eve sleeping with the serpent really represents a phallus, right? And so she engages with the phallus. And so now she slept with this other man as opposed to sleeping to her husband. And God was saying, don't sleep off that tree and to know knowledge of good and evil. So I'm aware that there are a number of interpretations that are out there, right? And people can have it. What I gather is that the predominant thought in a lot of cases is that this is a way a man and woman relationship ought to be. Now, as it relates to vanity, I mean, I could understand that as well. I really don't have much of a comment on that particular perspective because because it falls in line with a number of other perspectives that we could also bring to the fold, right? And we could go around and talk about those perspectives. But then the question for me becomes, back to your question in general speaking, what is the wisdom that we benefit the most from without pointing a finger? Because even the tone of, not from you, but I'm just saying from the concept of vanity is another, oh yeah, you see women have all that vanity, so that's why she's more susceptible. And to me, that's almost like another finger pointing. Oh, look at what the women always being in our makeup, right? So for me, and so it's a good question to ask for me to be able to say, man, we need to forget about all that. How can we realign ourselves in our relationship with God just here? And if we can do that and return to our Garden of Eden within our space, then by the grace of God, you can be with someone who's also aligned and walking in their purpose, Garden of Eden, right? They're within alignment. And that's one of the things I've learned to look for in a woman is show me alignment. Show me where things that you do spiritually, where you do within terms of your occupation and your education and your extracurricular activities, make it align, right? That thing should align. And I'm not saying that you can't be a person that has these different strengths, but I'm just saying you fry chicken on Saturdays, you do here on Friday nights, you run a nonprofit over here and you pave roads on the week. Like that's a lot going on. Focus and be aligned. And that's what I'm saying. That's where I believe our place is. We are best suited in the kingdom when we are able to come to alignment and return back to that Garden of Eden.
Great point. Jay, let's jump to you for a question.
Okay. Adrian, it was something on your post that I saw and I wanted to see if you can answer it, but I know you will. How would you be able to determine if a woman will be able to uphold your legacy? Also, what would be your position if you discover that the woman you married could not meet your qualifications and uphold your legacy, but she has the qualities to be a great wife?
Oh man, so I like the way you made that question, box it in, right? You boxed it in on one side, boxed it in on the other, right? So she's a great wife, but can't uphold your legacy, then she ain't a great wife. I believe it was a meme that I had shared that this is what we should be looking for is a woman who can uphold your legacy. And there was a lot of conversation about that. David Cole had even chimed in on that one as well. Well, so the question becomes a very personal question for each person to determine. First, what is the legacy that you want to uphold? Because we have various things that contribute to the legacy. And if the contribution to that legacy is someone who's able to tend to the children while all these other things are going on, that's fine. If it's someone who writes, oh, come on, help me out with the name. South African president and his wife.
Mandela?
Mandela and Winnie.
What was Winnie?
Winnie.
Hey, listen, Mandela went to prison. Winnie kept his name alive. She kept his legacy alive, right? She kept the work that he was doing alive. Now, after he came back, they were together for a short time and they divorced. But she has always maintained the posture of forwarding his work even while he was away. And that's what I think continuing that legacy is. But I also believe that you have to determine what that looks like for you, right? It's not a one size fit all. So in looking for a wife and having a conversation about whether she's able to uphold your legacy, it's one, knowing what your legacy is, two, being in alignment with that particular legacy. And then if you are subject to a woman that you believe God has given it to you to work within that particular dynamic, then why would she not be upholding the legacy? Right. So so to me, it becomes counter that I don't understand if you're a great wife, but then you're not upholding the legacy. So then it means that we're defining what a great wife is, and we're defining what having a legacy is as two different things.
Separate entities. Yeah.
They're two separate entities, and I'm defining it as that's one. And so again, but what that may look like will look different for everybody. You know, every woman is not going to write a book on her husband and the work that he did. But some women, the legacy that she may uphold may be in how she raises the children or the support system that she plays in the background, right? If you have a man that's out front leading as a public figure, let's say, okay? But if we're not talking about the likes of Martin Luther King and Mandela and those, then how do you do that within your own circle? How do you do that within your own community? How would you like it if you're trying to help the kids at the YMCA and your wife is up there like, I don't know why you always got to be up there helping them kids at the YMCA every day. That don't make no sense. Like that's not uphold that. You see, that to me is taken away from the legacy of what you're doing even within your community and the good work that you're doing there. So unless we're going to define those differently, I don't see how they're compatible.
So you planning on divorcing her?
If she's not upholding the legacy?
He wouldn't have married her.
By grace, I'm hoping that I wouldn't have never married her to begin with.
But remember what I asked you though, but you married her though. But you find out that she don't have those qualities to uphold it, but yet she's a great wife.
Then she can't be a great wife. In my book, that's not being a great wife.
Bye,
if you're looking at being a great wife based on what domestic duties, her ability to cook and clean, her ability how can you be a great wife and not uphold my legacy? To me, that's contradicting.
I do feel like they go hand in hand.
But let me ask you this though, Jay. How are you defined? I think that's probably the question to ask. How do you define legacy, and how do you define great wife?
For me personally, first of all, for me personally, it was like you said when they was talking about Adam and Eve, and it's basically carrying me through mentally. When I need you, you there. You my backbone, you my front bone, you my side bone. You understand what I'm saying? Because me personally, I'm gonna carry what I need to carry for myself. Because at the end of the day, she had the legacy that she want to carry out just as well. You understand? And at the end of the day, like you said, when it comes to your kids, those are your legacies. You understand? Because one thing about a woman that I tell a lot of men, women carry a lot of weight. They carry way more than what we carry. 9 months she carried you, no charge. And at the end of the day, my thing is saying, hey, listen, she loves me for who I am. She appreciates me for who I am. And I understand who she is. She may be the greatest scientist, but she may not be a mathematician. But I'm the mathematician. So I'm not going to expect her to be able to handle math like I would. Because what you leave, she may not be able to handle. You understand what I'm saying? So,
yeah. But then that to me is not a matter of legacy. Then that's a matter that, I mean, that's an ideal situation where if she's good at one thing and not so good at the other, by our oneness, if I'm good at it and she's good at something else, we come together and we're one. Then we're able to lean on each other. See, when I talk about legacy, I go back to that question. I go back to my conversation about what is the purpose as to why God has put you here. Now we define that in different ways. We may call it purpose. We may call it what is my ministry, right? We may so if whether it's purpose or ministry or what
Passion.
you believe. Say that again.
Passion.
Right. What is your passion? Right. That thing that's burning inside you to do. If you believe that there is something inside you to do, and it is a part of your purpose and your passion, and you have someone telling you that they're not in agreement with you to do that, that thing is going to can potentially create conflict within you. And that's what I mean when I talk about legacy. So it's not this big Nelson Mandela thing only. It's your legacy even within the home with your child rearing. Imagine if you're trying to raise your child a particular way in a particular path, as a particular understanding that you want the children to have, but then she's working against that. She's working against the legacy. Because what you put in those children, if God has shown you that you should get in your car right now and drive to Orlando because he wants you to meet someone and there's ministry for you to do there, and he wants you to connect there and to start a church up there, and your wife is like, well, I'm not interested in being no preacher's wife. Now she's standing as a roadblock, potential roadblock between your legacy. Now you take it back to God. Okay, God, she don't want to be no pastor's wife. What do you want me to do? But that's what I mean. She has to be in alignment with my purpose, and I have to be in alignment with her.
But you do understand when you're talking spiritual, the legacy should be God straight across the board. Because God tells us that our legacy that we're supposed to leave with our husband and our children is God. If we're gonna talk about God, that's the legacy.
Yeah, but you still got to do something, right?
No,
you understand what I'm saying? You're still gonna have to do something. There has to be. One of the things, and I think Chris is gonna like this, because I don't know if I mentioned it last time. One of the things that I think a man needs to first do is to establish himself in the I am. When there was a burning bush, and Moses said, well, who has sent me? God responded, I am. And if you describe yourself in any form or fashion, the first thing you say is, I am hungry, I am great, I am an overcomer. See, that I am speaks to the God that is inside of you. And the scripture shows you that God is the God. If God is the God today, yesterday, and forevermore. If the sun never rises tomorrow, you all, and if God never did anything for you in your life for the rest of your life on this earth, God will still be God. You see, people understand God for his works, and they don't understand God for just simply being God. And the scripture tells us that. That's scripture. People want to only acknowledge God when he sees you working in his life. But just because God ain't working in your life, so to speak, does not mean God is any less God. But we first have to understand God as the I am. He exists because he is. Then what God did was God sent his Christ spirit by way of the Son, and his Son is the doer. And in, Peter, it shows you that all things are done by Christ Jesus. Even the beginning of this earth was created by Christ Jesus. So he does work by way of his Son. So he does work, but you be and then you do. So if you understand that you have a legacy in your being, you're going to have to move to the next step, which is in your doing. Don't tell me how great of a basketball you are, player, and how you would have been to the NBA, and I ain't never seen you dribble. We need to see you go at some point do, but if you first establish within yourself that I'm great, good, now go and show us that you're good. So at some point, that legacy has to become action that takes place. And a woman has to, by grace, it is my hope and my prayer that people find each other in the place of their purpose, and that they're suitable for each other to propel their relationship, and that there is their legacy in any dispensation that it may present itself.
Bruh.
Like it.
Booyaka.
Alicia, you're on mute.
I was saying that I totally agree, especially with that alignment, because a lot of times when things happen in a relationship and they're, you know, in a marriage, you guys can get off course with where you're going or what you're doing. But that alignment a lot of times acts as a compass to say, listen, here's where we need to get to. And I know right now we might be off course, but it provides you that recalibration sometimes when life just kind of throws you off track. So I do love the idea of two coming together and being aligned. That would be ideal. And we know that every situation isn't like that, but I agree with your desire of wishing couples had that prior to getting together. But
Yeah.
let me toss it to Charles, because yeah, I know we could talk about alignment and task and roles all day, but let me toss it to Charles.
No, I agree as well. No, 100% actually. Because yeah, I definitely believe in the alignment. I mean, to me, it's just about being equally yoked. So,
Right.
you know, when you're both equally yoked in a situation, then you should be on the same page to be able to support each other and move to that next level. But I feel like also these should be conversations that we should be having prior to marriage. We should understand each other, and we should understand what the vision is that we also want to create before we actually, you know, get into a hand-to-hand marriage situation. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I believe so. My book is really a three set series. The second part of the book to come out is going to be a guided journal for men that follows the chapters throughout the book and helps in his thought process in preparation for marriage. The third, and I call that the workbook. So what's published now is the book. Then you have the workbook. Third, I have what is called the playbook. And the playbook is going to be a manual that talks about finances, themes for the kids, communication styles, leadership development styles. It's going to be this handbook for men. It's the playbook. And what I want to do is, and I'm probably going to make this an online course, is I want men to be able to take leadership within the home, and women too, because it's going to end up being mutual, to be able to have a marital / organizational conversation at some point within the year. You know, on your job, you do a yearly review. Right. So let's do a marital review. Let's revisit what our vision is. Let's talk about what our saving goals are for the year. Let's talk about what the theme is for the year. I'm a single, I co-parent, but as a father, single with the 3 kids, you know, I'm thinking like, what can I do with these little suckers? Like, I don't even know sometimes, right? And I'm like, I know other men are out here like maybe not as savvy in all of the ideas. So I want to create something where it's themed. You know, this year is we're going to the planets and the stars, and list out activities you can do that's related to astronomy. Today, you know, this year we're going to focus on sports and all things sports, and the type of activities outside of the soccer, football, the main things that we know that we can expose children to. And I want to be able to connect that on a virtual platform so that we can get connected to those particular activities and themes and things that go along with it and connected educationally. Obviously, you see I have a vision, but the point here is those should be ongoing conversations. And I want to help create a system that facilitates that ongoing dialogue, right? Because you got to go back and look at the vision and see how it's working and see what's not working and make adjustments. And y'all weren't planning on this other kid and she's pregnant now. So what are we going to do, right? How are we going to reroute things? So I think one of the things that men are sometimes challenged with is how to have these conversations. And I just want to create a platform to give them tidbits on how to start these conversations and what the conversation should be about. So I definitely agree, before marriage and ongoing within the marriage.
Thank you very much for that. And that's a great segue to my next question, actually, speaking of kids. So the question is this. So knowing the pressures from women, girls, and society that your son may receive, how would you facilitate the lessons you've learned to your son in 2020?
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old daughter, and a 7-year-old son. My 11-year-old is also a son. I'm trying to figure it out currently, to be honest with you. I don't know sometimes, right? Because so my son being 11, you know, I talk to him about there's this girl that he likes. We have conversations about it. But what I keep on going over and over in my head though is when would be the best time to have certain conversations with them? And my kids are very innocent right now. They just want to play Roblox. And I'm thinking, well, maybe when they're closer to 13, maybe on the verge of going to high school. My kids are very reserved, especially my oldest son. He's very reserved, but he ain't stupid too. I found out he likes breasts, so he knows something, right? So I'm trying to. So I honestly am just trying to figure it out myself. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what's the best thing to tell them, how much to tell them, how do I expose them to different things, and I don't know yet. I don't know. I just keep on praying about it and said, okay, is this the best time? What should I tell them? And so I'm waiting. I'm trying to find those answers for myself when it comes to children, to my kids.
That's honest.
Yeah. So I looked at my son the other day, right? And I have this joke with my kids, and I'd be like, you know, you were in my balls one time, man. And look at you now. My son would be like, oh, don't tell me that, Daddy. That's gross. I was not in your balls. I was in mommy's stomach. And I was like, do you even know how you got here? And he was like, I was in mommy's stomach. I was like, oh, you don't know yet. Okay.
You don't know yet.
You don't know yet. So
that's a
another
decent
conversation.
filler.
So I'm like, you know what? Since you don't, I ain't gonna tell you just yet. I'll wait till you get to human growth and anatomy.
Right.
Maybe
Mark, I think you were gonna say something. You're muted.
No, I was just saying, Adrian. But on a serious tip, that is nasty to tell your son that he was once in your ball. That is nasty. I'm just saying.
I guess I am too, Mark, because that's what I told my daughter. And she said, you.
But listen, my kids bust me though. So if you come around the house and my daughter does this on purpose, she'd be like, yeah, so you know what my daddy told us? Like, hey,
right.
My daddy said we were, yeah.
Right.
She does it on purpose too. I know her.
Yeah.
She's only 9.
Good. Yeah. She learning. That's nice.
Right. For the sake of time, let me toss it to Chris. Chris, you want to close this out?
Yeah, sure. I was gonna ask you, Adrian, how Black men can come together and build a social construct that reflects our cultural roots and evolution as a people. But you already answered that in the first part of Charles' question, right? You just put it all out there. But let me ask you this though. What aha moment made you decide to look at the makeup of the male role in society?
When society would
Black, yeah.
Say that again, specifically to what?
Specifically the Black male. I mean, all male, but you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
right.
When I was getting bust over the head during my separation and divorce for being a man and watching my marriage fail and being told that it was my fault. And one of the things, and I was having this conversation earlier, one of the things that was striking to me was I watched women run to, and let me back up. So for full disclosure, Jay and I go back some years now, right? So Jay Horn was one of the people who was a support system for me while I was getting divorced, while I was separated and going through my divorce process. So Jay knows me very well. And he and I have these long, extensive conversations from the moon and back about life, the core of the earth and where aliens come from. But I share that to say, so he's aware of me going through this period of time. And I'm up there. And one of the things that really just stood out for me was I watched people, what would appear at the time, women in particular, run to the support of my ex. And it wasn't about wrong or right or how crazy things were, but it was simply just because she was a woman. Like she just garnered support. And I was just like, nobody cares about me. It felt like nobody cared about me. It was just like, And I was able to pull on some folks, but it was interesting. It was just like a drove of women, and I was like, wow, like I really saw that in this dynamic of male female relationships. I wasn't that cared for as a man. There's this very stoic responsibility that I have. I'm supposed to be there, be present. It's not about my feelings. It's just be there, be present, provide, and protect. Like these very structured blocks. And the moment you try to do anything outside of that, you're not a real man, da, 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 da. And the more I saw this construct break down based on money and hearing what other people had to say, I began to see that we were in trouble, right? And had I not gone through this experience, I would have never noticed. I would have been champion, man, you gotta provide, I would have been championing the same stoic, right? And boxing men in. So that experience is what jump-started my particular perspective. And I really began to go before God and was like, yo, what's going on? This is different. Like what I never seen, what is up? And that's when I began to get revelations in ways that even with things that I realized that I knew or had been taught before by my mentor, Dr. Hunt, but it had not fully processed. So I began to learn more, and then it moved from my personal relationship to realizing that other men were going through other things in their relationships, and even as ex-husbands. If you hear some of the stories, listen, and you guys know, if you hear some of the stories from other men about what they've gone through in relationships, but how they say nothing about it because they basically feel that they can't, you will be floored. You would be absolutely floored. So those experiences are actually the greater experiences that said, I have to write this. Because for some reason, we ain't allowed to talk. We're not allowed to express ourselves. The moment we do that, we're seen as less than men. And then as I continue to go through that process, I realized that the greater issue for Black Americans, Black people in America, is that we have gotten caught up in trying to practice our family nucleus as white Americans, white Eurocentric ideas. And that is where we're missing the boat. We're so caught up in trying to look like white people in provision and protection that economically, the fact of the matter is we can't even afford to live that lifestyle, even if we wanted to. Because where's the wealth in our community that allows for that as an upper middle class family? It was never designed for us, and I write about that in the book. So when we begin to go from my personal relationship to talk about other men, mostly being Black men, and then look at our Black society at large, I realized that we're trying to compete with the white Joneses in a system that was never designed for us. And so the only way, or I wouldn't say the only way, but one of the ways that I think we can break that cycle is to stop this conversation about provision and protection in the ways that we've been having it. The man is supposed to make more. How? Like dynamically in the 21st century, it's not even like that anymore, right? But if we can find a way to lose this concept about what being a man is and leadership and money, because we've connected finance to all of that. You have to finance leadership. You have to finance masculinity. You're supposed to finance your manhood. Think about that. Most of that system is entrenched in how we finance those particular aspects of our role. That's where I think our larger social issue is as Black people. If we can begin to undo that, if sister, you make $120,000 and I only make $50,000, and we decide to get married, oneness is oneness. You can't play both, and that goes back to our very first interview. You can't play both sides of the field. You can't want upward mobility and then don't take the responsibility that comes with it, right? You have to do both and work together. So I think Black people, the construct of Black people at this particular juncture, being that we are the low man on the totem pole, our money stays in our community for $1, means that we, with regards to the family nucleus, we have to combine our assets. It's not anybody's fault that being a journalist only pays you $30,000 coming out of college, and being an accountant pays you $60,000 or $50,000 coming out of college. That's not anybody's fault, because we can't tell people to go pursue their passions. But because a salary is associated with their passion, then we undermine their passion. And that goes back to your purpose. So if you're walking in your purpose and that has a particular educational route with it, my dad does HVAC. He fixes ACs. He goes around. He's working on getting contracts. But if that doesn't get him $100,000 a year, that doesn't make him less than a man. But then if my mother's making $100,000 a year and he cleared 25, then they made 125. Like, oneness has to be oneness. And I think when Black people can divorce themselves from that particular mentality and just look to pour into the pot and build, then I think we'll be much better off for it and be able to move forward as a Black society. So my book ultimately is added value for assisting the family nucleus and wealth building.
Yeah, I got that. Mark, anything you want to add?
Oh no, you know what, Adrian? I mean, you've been dropping dimes for the whole duration of this and of the last show. The religious part of it, because of what I've come to understand, is probably 90 degrees of what you're saying. But the aspect of realizing, of separating role from task, which I love that, just in this carnal plane, it is a lot to be valued. There's a lot to be read into that. And I'm, with I'm definitely recommending a lot of my nephews read this book. And I, like I said, the religious connotations are a little off from what we understand, but everything else in there is like right on point, and I want them to read it.
Charles, anything you want to add?
Oh man, I'm enjoying all the jewels as well, man. Great insight, man. I read the book as well, man. I loved it. You definitely gave me a different perspective on how to look at things as well. In the book, you mentioned, you felt like you were doing everything that you could do in the beginning, and you were, got to a point where you had to just ask, like, well, what is it that I'm not doing? Like, did you ever get those answers? Like, because it seemed like, I know you mentioned that she checked out within the first 5 months, but
that was heartbreaking to read. I don't mean to cut you off, Charles.
And you guys were right.
In the 8-year marriage, to know she checked out at 5 months.
Right.
Like, you're still supposed to be in honeymoon stage then, and she was already checked out. Like, we would run to our girlfriends for support. So the fact that you meddled in that for so long,
right.
I can't imagine.
9 years.
Yeah, that's.
But how were you able to do so without the answers that you were looking for? Or did you get the answers and try to work through it? Or was it just fate that kept you pushing?
No, I was in a state of conflict for the vast majority of that relationship, right? So the one, that's a really good question. I appreciate that question a lot, because it helps clarity in terms of my personal story. I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't know how to respond to what was going on, right? Because it's kind of like, and I'm going to keep it 100 in terms of, from my perspective. It's at one point, I was dealing with someone who was immature. Let me be frank about that. Now, whether she agrees, disagrees, that's not, it is what it is. That's a state, that's a fact. I was 26 years old, she was 22. Now, if a person can't look at themselves at 22 and say they were immature, then that tells you a lot about the person. Now, by the time I was 25 years old, I was the director of my department. I was making a decent salary. By the time I was 27, I had my master's. I had been in leadership, and I was the head of a leadership development department at a college. I was doing very well for myself. And so there's a certain level of maturity that I did have, even though I was still a young man and growing. And I had someone who was less mature than me, and I didn't know how to respond to that, right? I didn't know how to respond to that. It was very confusing. You know, things that I thought would have been appropriate and the right thing to do. When I'm doing it, I'm being met with something that it's awkward. It becomes very awkward, because if I cooked and cleaned up and I have dinner ready, I would think that you would come home and be happy. Yeah, and I'm being serious. I'm not you know, I don't like the fact that in many instances, telling my story implicates her. I don't like that. But it's necessary in order for my story to be understood, right? So within the first year of that marriage, I was devastated. It's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, I literally sat on the couch and cried to her. Like, I don't know what to do. I mean, how do I cook dinner and you come home and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. You know, it's and even being tired from work, you know, like what she was a lot of times, I understood all that. But I was really trying to be an upstanding man according to what I knew to do. But I didn't get the answer until after I got divorced. And the answers were, on my part, that I don't think I should have stayed in the relationship as long as I did. After I got that communication from 5 months that I was not her number one priority, then I should have left. But what I kept on doing was, and this became my conflict with my church, with my personal church, with me and within the relationship, because the church is saying, well, you know, you got to hold on to that and make it work and da. And I'm trying to, and then at the end, when it was all said and done, the church was like, well, God didn't tell you to marry her. That was what you wanted to do. I was like, oh, hell no. We're not playing that game.
Not after they signed off on it too.
Right, not after you signed off on it, right? Not after I came to you to do it the right way. So what I realized after was I needed to simply just be my own man. I realized after that I needed to be accountable for myself 100%. There's nothing that anyone can tell me that by grace, I want to agree with and feel that I need to do because if they're for some position that they haven't. Because at the end of the day, the only person who's going to feel the brunt of any of the outcome is always going to be me. So I found the answers after, right? And I realized that there was a lot of things that I did wrong in the relationship, and I talk about it in the book. You know, my biggest regret in the relationship, or one of them, was I really did clock out myself, right? I later clocked out and said, if you don't like me doing right, I'm going to do wrong. Mm-hmm. Oh, right. That I wish I could take that moment back, you know, because that changed. Because at that point, now I'm doing whatever. I'm gonna go out and sleep with whoever. Mm-hmm. You don't even sleep with me. So what we doing anyways, right? Don't right. So I found the answers after. I needed to be my own man. I was dealing with someone who was immature or a lot less mature than I was, and I also needed to grow up, and so I did.
Nice.
Very good. Very good.
Jay, any final words?
I'm gonna be nice.
Okay.
I'm gonna be nice. But I need to ask this question if I can ask this question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So Carter, if I were to ask you, did she serve your purpose? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because you have that book now.
Absolutely, she did.
Great.
She absolutely did. I wouldn't be, so I'm gonna, I think this is maybe the third time I'm sharing this. I'll be very quick. I remember asking God to bless me to understand this thing about marriage and relationships. I remember asking him that when I was around 24 years old. And over the last few months, God reminded me, remember when you asked me? See, so I mean, listen, it's in some instances, I appreciate the support and you all reading it, right? And Mark, you wanted to share it because, you know, we want to get them book sales up. But let's just be very clear. This understanding and the level of profoundness that it is, it came through that, right? So the Lord reminded me, you wanted to know this stuff, right? So I had to go through it in order to get here. And that has comforted my heart in knowing that it's purposeful And now, man, Mark, you want your nephews to read this, right? And even though I love the fact that you're looking at the scripture and saying, man, some of this don't jive with me with what I've learned, but you're wrestling with it, right? And we can talk, right? And we can continue to deliberate, but look at the impact that it's now have, that we can think about, different things about how we define our masculinity and our manhood. So it definitely met its purpose. And I'm more and more grateful for that, because the bigger work is being demonstrated right here on this live.
Mm. That's the one thing I said when I read it. I said, man, this man has been through something. And the one thing that we understand that, one, be careful what you ask for.
Right.
And two,
right.
A lot of times to build up, you have to be torn down.
Absolutely.
Before you can really see or anything be revealed to you, especially in the purpose of Yahweh. So I appreciate that, man. I'm telling you, the book is like, this brother here. Yeah,
right.
You're not talking, you walk through those steps, you know what I'm saying? So It's like, yeah, Adrian has been through some stuff.
I just certainly hope that all these women are listening, right? To Adrian's point, that we actually suffer in silence while everybody get together like the Spice Girls with this girl power thing and start to be in Scary Spice. All right. Listen, we don't really, but for real though, you're always playing the victim, no matter what. If I'm telling you that this girl right here is promiscuous, you defend her. You defend any type of girl, right? So actually start listening to what men go through, but we don't necessarily say it. We don't necessarily say, listen, my ex-wife or my ex-girl, she cheated on me with like 10 men, because we feel embarrassed, we feel humiliated. So we kind of like keep everything inside, but it's not just you. So we can put down the violin for a second, okay, for your victim sad story all the time, because we actually experience some too.
Yeah.
I respect the transparency, man. Like, you were very open in the book, and I know that took a lot of courage for you to even just share that, with the world. But I respect it even more, because that also can help someone else that could have been through the same things, man, on how to
absolutely
process it. You know what I mean? But do you feel like with you doing the soul searching that you did, taking accountability, finding yourself, do you feel like, yes, if you change some things within that relationship, it could have worked out?
No.
Judas plays a role for a reason.
Yeah. I one person told me, and they were right. They were like, listen, Adrian, two things. Like, in the future, you're going to be happy that this is the best decision you ever made in terms of the divorce. And second, another person said to me, no matter what, you would have always landed here. Because the person who I was married to is a very conflicted individual. And so in that conflict, right, they're always going to be pointing. I mean, my mentor, who I love and I care about so much, right, was someone who he wanted to play golf on a particular time, and I'll go play golf and then come home and then get cussed out. But my mentor was also the pastor of the church, so I'm getting cussed out for going to play golf. I'm like, hey, you left me here with the kids. I'm like, come on, man, like, it was a few hours. Like, you act like you not their mother. You can't curse me out for going to play golf with my pastor. I didn't go rob a bank and get caught. Put the emphasis on get caught. Me get caught and go locked up, right? So they had a lot of problems. And listen, I'll be very clear about this. Her story and her perspective is one that I respect and I understand, and she's allowed it, right? So I'm quite sure to hear things from her side would be very different. But the point of the book is, for whatever the reason is, traditionally, our side, the male perspective, is usually just shrugged and pushed to the side. So it's relevant for that reason. But I had someone that was very difficult to be able to grow with. And so I think they're right. I would have always ended up here. I mean, listen, I gave an offering to the church one time, and that was a problem. So, but I grew up in the church. My father is now the head pastor, along with he's the head pastor along with another brother. And you can't win for losing. You know, after a while, it does become that. And I experienced that from the first year of the marriage. So that is obvious indication of where things would have ended up. So, but it was purposeful. I'm here, and I don't think it would have changed.
I heard something from TD Jakes one time when he said, nothing that you go through will be wasted. So it's not even just the high moments that we'll be able to reference and, you know, use later on, but it's those low, dark, cloudy moments that really help you to become the very thing that you were designed to become. And I want to thank you all because even the discussion around playing victim, it's important for us women to really think about that and really consider that as our first move of action in making this thing better, because it does take two. And it's easy to play victim, but it doesn't move anybody forward or in a direction. So I don't want to be long-winded when I say this, but, you know, I'm just thankful for the insight you shared, because there's a time and a place to debate, and this was not the place to debate. It's really to understand what you all go through, because our side is represented so much. There's no shortage of the woman's voice in relationships, you know? So it's so important to hear you all's perspective on what you go through, what you experience, the abuse, the neglect. I mean, there's not enough of you talking, so I'm so thankful that you all were willing. Chris, any final words before we close? I know we went a little bit over time. For the folks tuning in, I can't thank you enough for just supporting this dialogue. I hope it was as impactful and provoking to you as it was for us. Again, we appreciate your support. Chris, I don't remember if I even jumped to you, I'm sorry, but did you have any closing words?
No, I just agree 100% that, you know, everything actually works out when you look at it in retrospect, right? For example, Adrian's story, right? I just wonder, and I know it's what you can't answer that right now, but I just really wonder how she feels right now, you know?
Yeah.
And do you know?
I mean, I don't think she's I don't think she's happy with the book. But you know what though, the thing for me though is living here in South Florida, what I'm trying to do is not about the community of people who may know us personally in South Florida. My goal is to be able to connect with Mark in California, right? Who doesn't know her at all. There are more people in this world who don't know who my ex-wife is than there are people who do. And so the message contain the importance and the relevance of the message is purposeful beyond that. Mark doesn't know my ex-wife, and it's irrelevant. But the message continues to do its job. So, you know, and like I said, I don't like it in the what it is, but it is what it is, right? Because I don't want to appear nasty about it. I don't like that there are things, but guess what? They were done though, right? And it's what got me here, right? And it is what shaped the perspective. So at this juncture, it becomes what it is.
It's that accountability that we just got to own, the right. Part that we played in the story.
Yep. Absolutely.
Listen, I even have Cassandra saying I need more. I know we've gone over a little bit on time. I'm so, you know, I apologize for that, but I didn't want to interrupt because it was so many valuable points that you all were making. So again, I thank you guys for coming together. If you have not already, and for the ladies, if you ever want to eavesdrop on a conversation, on a back and forth with man and God, or what men go through in relationships, how to better support men that are in relationships, and how to show up better in your relationships. Listen, you have to pay me for the marketing. But if you're
looking, help your man support you.
Help your man.
it also, yeah, it helps women also to understand how you can help your man support you better.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point. Great point. It evolves us from just being, it really helps us to be a better helpmate. I'll say it like that.
Yeah.
Nice how Mark throwing that with him.
That whip. No corporate talk here.
Way to go, Mark.
You know it.
You know what? Everything about this discussion was great, except for Charles's background, but I already gave him a pass on it. So I just want to again thank you guys for coming out. Adrian, how can we support you?
Well, please go to Amazon, go to goodreads.com, and you could look the book up, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last, A Heart to Heart with Men on Loving and Leading. And let me assure you, I think the book has a beautiful ending. I'm ecstatic about how the book ends in terms of talking about how to get away with love and talking about what the new woman looks like in the 21st century and how we as men need to support what this new woman looks like as we become a new man. So get the book. It's available on Amazon. Please leave a review. If you have not already, please leave a review. In the world of selling books, reviews are everything. So Mark, please leave a review. Gentlemen, leave a review. And goodreads.com is also a good place to go to look the book up as well.
All right, sounds good.
Will
We will
do.
be
Will do.
supporting. And Jay, we want to thank you for being a guest panelist today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. Thank you for sharing your insight. And it's not easy to just jump in and get vulnerable, but you did that very thing. So we applaud you and thank you for that.
Janet.
Until next time, fellas, thank you again. Please be safe. Viewers, thank you.
You're gonna get that beat.
All right. Respect, King.
All right, guys.
Thank you
Guys,
all
be
again.
safe.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Alicia.
All right. Great job, Adrian.